All right, we are live with another episode of the Event Hustlers here on Facebook Live. For those of you who are joining for the first time, my name is Liz King Caruso, and I'm super excited to have an amazing guest on with us today, Donvil Collins from Veekast. Donvil, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited, and I'm so glad to be a part of this show. So I know it's making moves and making boundaries, hitting boundaries. So I'm excited.
So I'm a little nervous to do this Facebook Live with Donvil because he is the king of Facebook Lives, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more later. But Donvil and I met several years ago. How many years has it been now? Maybe.
It's been a long time. Is it like 7?
Maybe 7.
Yeah.
I remember specifically, I don't know, some people I remember very specifically, like when I met them, and others I don't. But I remember meeting you at a Starbucks for the very first time, I think, across from Kelly's apartment, because we were working at Kelly, who was one of our team members at the time. Ed and I were working there, and we're like, hey, can you meet us at this Starbucks across the street? And I remember meeting you and learning all about Veekast, and it's been like bliss ever since then. We've worked together on a few projects, and we were just talking before we went live, we both moved to the same town, like in the same month here in New York. But so I obviously know you from several years of getting to know you, but why don't you just introduce yourself to the people who are watching, and that way they get to know you as well.
All right, cool. So, hi everyone. Nice to meet you all. My name is Donvil Collins. I'm the CEO of Veekast, and essentially, I've been doing all sorts of visual and technology content for virtually all my life, really starting businesses as early as 13 years old, and just has constantly sort of developed in different ways. But my passion is really on engaging people using visuals and technology and connecting to people emotionally and ultimately getting them to take the desired action. And that can get someone to respond emotionally and take action based on that emotion. That's my passion. And our company Veekast is built on that. Really from doing video production, which is, as we'll talk about, is a big part of what we do, both from producing videos for events as well as for nonprofits, for corporations and commercials, as well as from the technology side, as Liz knows, and what we love doing as well is providing interactive, engaging technology for events that people get excited about using during an event, and ultimately get them to participate and take desired actions. So it's passions, and I love it.
So you're a lifelong entrepreneur. One of those people who just kind of, you're like passionate about something, or you experience something, and then you always have that mind, right, to turn it into, how could this be a business?
Yeah, definitely.
So what was your first business when you were 13 years old?
So when I was 13, I don't know if you know this, Liz, but I play 5 instruments. So, so between the saxophone, the piano, the bass guitar, the drums, and a little bit of guitar too, because my dad was a touring musician when I was younger, so I think it just ended up happening.
Yeah.
But ultimately, once I realized I knew how to play a few instruments, I knew how to play, I think, at least at the time, I felt pretty decently well. I said, okay, well, how can I make some money off of this? And I started reaching out to all the kids that were in my church and said, I'll train you, but you have to ask your parents if they could pay me, because I'm not doing it for free. So that was the first business. It was me I literally had a class of about 5 kids, and every week I was training them. And that was my first little mini business. And then after that, I started a computer repair business, because during the time when my parents bought a computer, it was kind of a time where not a lot of people had computers. And my parents bought a computer. We were the only ones on that street, in that little neighborhood, that had a computer, and I broke it. The first one that we had, and then they bought a replacement, and I broke the second, and then they bought a replacement again, and I broke the third. By the time they bought the third one, I figured out how to fix all these broken computers that had broken. So then I said, that's when everyone else started getting computers in the neighborhood. So when they had issues, I said, I could fix it. for $60, $80, I'll fix your computer, sure. So those was my first few pre-adult businesses.
That's so funny. Your parents are very generous. If I broke one of my computers, I wasn't getting another one.
Oh, I still ask them to this day, why did you guys tolerate this? I don't understand. I wouldn't tolerate that.
No, and back then computers were even more expensive.
Really expensive. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I'm definitely of the same mentality. Here's something you probably don't know about me. My first business, we used to live in Ohio, and we had this like big lawn that went down to a river, and the river was very popular for like kayakers and canoes. So we would go to like, I don't know if it was Costco, but the version of Costco, and then we would scream from our lawn, ice cold pop, 50 cents, and we would sell sodas and waters and snacks. People would pull their kayaks onto our property, and we would sell them things. And I was probably 8 or 9 years old.
Oh wow, you were a shark.
I'm the same way.
So cool.
You do something that you love, and then you're like, the question you asked, all good people ask, how do I make money from this? So how did you come up with Veekast? Like, where was the start of that?
So the start of that, Veekast came out of, so even like when we met, I think it was maybe a little over a year or about a year after really getting it going. But essentially the name came off, pretty much I've been doing video production pretty much most of my life, also since 13. And when I was doing the business aspect and just doing videos, in the very beginning, doing a lot of wedding and social event content, weddings and mitzvahs and sweet 16s and et cetera. And then once I pivoted out of that, was doing primarily only corporate, not doing any social events at all. But then essentially, in the process of doing a lot of corporate events as well, then I noticed every time you would go to these corporate events, whether it's networking or conferences, and so I would see them have throughout the venue big screens, whether 65-inch or 60-inch screens throughout the venue that would be looping PowerPoints. And at the time, I felt like they're renting these screens, and then they're looping PowerPoints on it that no one is paying attention to.
Yeah.
And it's just like, so I felt like this is a complete waste of money. It's otherwise than it looking cool, it felt like a really big waste of money. So the idea came into my mind of what can we do to provide an aspect for people at the event to have something that they are interested in, to give them a reason to look at the screen, but then at the same time still provide a means for those ads or those loops to still play, but it's in conjunction with something that is interactive. That meaning something that people actually want to look at the screen. So after sort of coming up with the idea and building an initial technology, and saying, okay, well, this needs to be branded separately because the video production business is completely different, is because the video production business, as you may or may not know, is Diebold Media Inc. And that's always been the registered business name. But then for this, I said it needs to be different. So we branded it Veekast, and it pretty much meant it was something where we actually wanted it to be VEECAST or VCAST. But at the time, we found out that Verizon owned the trademark for it. So I said, okay, well, we'll just make it unique and we'll make it a K and make it a V. But it's essentially, the V comes from video, but it's from pretty much video casting onto screens, but using the visual aspect of that. So that's where it came from. Not a crazy story, but somewhat unique.
Well, I feel like that's how pretty much all good businesses are born, where you're looking at something and saying, this could be done so much better. And then you create it, and we used it for many of our TECHSYTALK events. And it's amazing, and I've talked to so many clients who say, I explain what it is. And they're like, oh, it's almost like no one thinks about the fact that a screen can do more than one thing.
Yeah.
You can have your looping video and some sponsors at the bottom and a Twitter feed on the one side. And there's so much functionality, but really it's not unless you're using Veekast.
Yeah.
People don't think about that. And then, you built a business off of it. It's amazing.
Yeah. Within the first couple years of doing it, it became more than, at the time, more than half the revenue of the business. So it was very interesting because I knew that it had some potential, but and I knew it did because literally when the idea came to me, it came to me sort of like a slap in the head. I remember I was walking out of, we were renting from Regis in White Plains on Main Street. And at the time it was the end of the day and I was walking out the door and there's like 2 glass doors. So before you get outside, and I walked past the first one and then right before I got to the second one, the idea literally just slapped me in the head. And I stopped and I was like, what in the world? And then I literally turned around, went back upstairs and then banged out a whole concept, the programming direction of like, what would make this part work like this? What are the variables? What are the if, ands, and buts to make this thing work? And then once I and then came up with the name that same night and then said, okay, now what do I need to do? Then just spent the next couple months building it. And I knew it was a hit home run because of how fast it came in my mind.
We were literally, so I have that Ignite group. And so we just had our call right before this and we were talking about just sometimes how you've been thinking about a concept for a really long time, or at least a need for a really long time. And then it's like, all of a sudden it hits you. I had this experience a few weeks ago. There's been something I want to launch, but I haven't figured out like how, and, what are the pieces and how does it work together and what's the money, the money behind it and whatever. And then I drove to Vermont for a speaking engagement and, it's 6 hours there, 6 hours back.
Oh,
and
wow.
Suddenly, similar thing. It just hits you. You're like, oh. And then you can't stop thinking about it. It's like obsessive and you start working on it. And it might take months to bring it to fruition.
Yeah.
But it's that moment that you're like, okay, I finally got it.
You do what I do, like, especially when I'm driving. Like, I don't know if you're like me. I hate driving because I feel like during that time, there's nothing that can be done, no work. I feel like it's an absolute waste of time. I'm one of those people where as soon as I'm a multi-millionaire, I'm sure I'm gonna have a personal.
You're gonna have a driver, sure.
Yeah, because I just hate it. But I do this thing like when ideas come in my mind and I'm driving, where I'll say, "Hey Google, start voice recording," and I'll just start recording everything, and I have all these long memos in my phone from driving. Do you do that? Yeah.
Yes, I do that. Plus, so I actually like driving. I don't mind it, but I have made it as optimal as possible. So I use the Google voice, the voice recording I use iPhone for writing all my blogs because I'm just like in the car. So I just talk them out and it voice transcripts them. Oh, and then when I get to the office, I just edit them real quick and post them. Like I'm publishing content while driving.
Yeah. I love it. That's the technology, and it comes in handy so great.
Yeah. So I mean, so both of your businesses really feed each other to some extent, right? Because you have an event production client that's using the technology, and then I'm sure they see your video production.
Yeah.
And like, I need more of that. I mean, of course, there's probably not complete overlap. Like I would imagine, I've seen you guys do some really cool videos lately for like restaurants. And I would imagine they're not necessarily using the Veekast technology, or are they?
So they're not. So as of now, and it's one of the things I'm sure you know as well, but we pretty much a few years ago merged the brand just into Veekast, and we represent ourselves as Veekast because ultimately a lot of the clients were using both anyway, especially in the event space. We do a lot of we produce a lot of videos that are for event features, where sometimes it's big announcements, kind of like the one you did for the last TECHSYTALK Live.
Yeah.
And we do them for conferences, major associations, and different things. So producing the content for the feature video they're going to display at the event is a big part of what we do, but as well as we're doing a lot of the times those technologies. And it's not always the player, right? So the multiplayer is that first technology, but the technology that we're using most of the time now is the Fundometer, and that's primarily, of course, for nonprofits. And the multiplayer is used within that as sort of conjunction. But a few years ago, since there's sort of all this overlap, and at least from an internal perspective, trying to tell everyone that, hey, we're Diebold Media, but I also do Veekast, and this whole confusion, I realized that it didn't really make sense. And then I had a couple of mentors that as well that said to me, look, you should just make it one. They're different services. They all really ultimately have the same vision, same goal, which for me is engaging people using visuals and emotions.
Mm-hmm.
With video or with technology or what have you, so ultimately a few years ago we ended up merging it into just Veekast, and we do video production and the technology. It's still difficult sometimes because they're two very different services. but especially when someone knows you for one thing and they don't know you for the other, or if someone is checking you out to hire us for one thing and then they see something else on their website, you want to find out, well, what do you do best? We do them both. We're both very different businesses, but many of the businesses we work with use both.
But
so
it's got to be a lot easier for like marketing, accounting.
Yeah.
Two totally different. I mean, like you said, there are some issues that still overlap, but yeah, it's a lot easier than running two completely separate companies.
We've done recently, and we give them, and especially when you're trying to close a new deal, we give them, this is what this costs, and this is what this costs. If you merge them together, we can bulk it and make it more a better deal, if you will. But they're two different things, and I like to give it to people in that vein, because then they can actually compare it apples to apples to someone else that only does one of those things.
Right. Yeah.
If you're giving them the whole thing, they might look at it and say, okay, well, seems like a lot. So in general, it's always sort of some level of overlap, but I can't stop doing both because they both are very significant. and I love doing both of them. I've always, as I mentioned, I think the background was really good because I've always been a technology guy, and I became a TV producer actually at 13 years old as well. So all of that, it all kind of happened all at the same time, and they've always both been a big part of everything I do.
You were a mover and shaker at 13. I was like going through puberty and looking at boys.
I don't know what I was thinking, but I guess I was doing a lot.
That's awesome. Now, so one of the other things I wanted to talk to you about is that, I strongly believe that content marketing is one of the best ways to get your brand out there. And I mentioned in the beginning that I'm a little nervous to do this interview with you because you have a really good Facebook Live series that you've been doing. And I think in general, I mean, obviously you're very talented with video, but in general, you do a very good job of engaging people and keeping people excited. I've seen you do some contests and stuff. So I would love to learn, first of all, the role that content marketing has played for you, but also any tips and tricks to make this look cooler and to engage and to really get it to reach the goals, which is to educate and connect with people.
So first of all, I want to congratulate you on really doing a good job of getting this going and doing a good job, because the first thing, of course, and I heard you talk about this recently too, is just doing it, right? I love the Nike slogan, is just do it, It's so
do it.
So ultimately, I think a lot of people don't end up doing something because they're thinking about the logistics too much and all the details. And I always tell everyone that if you have an idea, just do it and figure out the details later, So congratulations on that with you. For me, for the content side, we started doing this and I love doing it. And you would think as a video company doing this for so long, 13 years now, as a registered business before doing it prior to being an adult at least. But you'd think for us, we would have been doing this for much longer, but really it wasn't initially I guess a priority for us to do it. We like doing it for everyone else, but it's kind of like, you do everyone else's job and you don't do it on yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, you always believe it, but just like, I got to focus on everyone else's work, not my own. So, but eventually I said to the guys, like, I feel like we just need to do this because not only is it going to be helpful for people to sort of know different things and learn different things about how to use video best and how to take advantage of different things, but it will also help with our own visibility. And I think content marketing, that's the key for it. Now, I'm not going to say that I had this grand strategy going into this. I had the same just do it attitude. I literally called Daniel, Daniel, our production manager, while I was on the way into the office one day and say, this idea just came to me. And I know we've talked about this before, but instead of trying to plan this all out and make it all organized and try to figure out how we're going to get it on all the different platforms, everything. Let's just start something. It could be completely garbage. It completely screw up. But at the end of the day, it would be much better than doing nothing. And one of my big challenges is that I'm not good at writing, and not necessarily like I'm bad at writing. I'm just not good at taking the time to focus on what I'm writing.
Sure.
I'm a talker, a visual person. I'm the kind of person that even for education wise, I would rather hear the reading of a book, right? The ebooks and or whatever, than actually read it. And I've always been that way. From I was a little boy, my mother always tried to get me to read like my sister, and I was just never interested. I would be the one that is trying to open up something, a new toy I got just to figure out how it works, because I just can't read. So that's always been my struggle. And I said, well, the blog, every time I heard about content marketing and all of that, it was always about writing blogs. And I said, that's not me. I can't do that. And I tried it a few times. And then ultimately I said, you know what? As I was learning, and even from mentors, always focus on what you do best, and whatever you don't do well, have someone else do it. You know, find someone that's their strength and let them do that, and whatever is your strength, focus on that. And I also ultimately said, you know what, I'm just going to adopt this in terms of the content marketing too. I'm not a writer, that's not my forte. It bores me. So ultimately, I'm just going to make a video, make a fool of myself, make a show of myself in video, and then have someone else do the writing. And ultimately, even so, starting it and been doing it a few weeks now, and I'm sure you know this too, it's hard to keep it consistent.
Yes.
It is. It's very hard, but ultimately it works so well. And just from the shabbiness, I'll call it, and I know shabbiness, as you're saying, it might be a relative word, because what I may consider shabby might be really high end.
Yeah, it looks very nice.
But just from doing it this way, even for the I think maybe a couple months now we've been doing it for, has been really good from a business perspective, and just for engagement. For the engagement side, it's so good just to keep everyone engaged. But new business out of it has been amazing, because now all the people that I connect with on these platforms, now I'm getting inquiries from people I've known for a long time, and the only reason that they remember or know us is because they've been seeing these videos regularly. And then I said, you know, that makes so much sense. And that's why content marketing is so important. It's to keep us on the top of minds of people, and also being able to share that information that you have so people can take advantage of it themselves. And ultimately, at the end of the day, if they can't do what you're sharing, they're going to ask you to help anyway, but you can give away that information for free. But that's the reason we do it full time, because this is our profession. This is what we do.
Yeah, I think people often underestimate the value of content marketing. I've definitely heard people say, like, it's ridiculous to give away your secrets. It's like, you're never, like, I could tell you everything in the world about event planning. Many people just cannot plan their own events. They can't do it. They're going to call me. But like you said, it's the ability to just stay top of mind, to provide something that's actually of value to people, so that they feel like, okay, you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's where they go when they have 70 options of other people they could go to. Who do they call? You know, the one that they trust. And I really believe that people like to see the journey. You know, you were talking about shabby, and yes, we all have different versions of shabby. It can start pretty crappy. I mean, even just, I think this is our 4th episode already. And, you know, I'm starting to learn about things like, oh, I should probably focus on where the light is coming from, so it doesn't look like I'm talking in a tunnel. And, you know, like just today, I realized, so I use this StreamYard platform. You saw, I just realized you can like show people's comments on the screen.
Oh, wow.
Figure that out accidentally by clicking on one to respond to it. And I was like, this is so cool.
Oh, this is cool. How
we're going to use that in the future. So you don't, you know, it's just like, sometimes it's okay to be like, oh, I just learned this new thing, and then use it. And then people see the quality get better. I feel like halfway or partway into your series, you like changed the camera or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is looking like professional.
So the first couple of episodes we did, I said, just bring the camera in, and they're trying to figure out all the logistics we'd usually do on our client job. And I said, listen, if you're gonna go through all that detail, this is never gonna get done. Just put the camera there, let's turn the camera on, just throw a light on, and let's just do this.
Yeah.
So the first couple we did, that's what we did. And then ultimately, eventually, a couple of weeks later, as I'm looking at the videos, I'm like, no, but this needs, your passions and your conviction kick in, and I'm just like, this needs to step up a bit. It's not right. And that's why it's good to just start, because you could always perfect after you figure out the little things. So after a while, then I said, no, we need to have a couple of lights in here just to really let people see the kind of work we do. But we said, let's make a process so that it doesn't take us a ton of time. We could do this every week. It's a regular process. Certain things are always here. We just know it's just repeated. It's a repeatable thing that it doesn't take much time to just get it done. So we ended up having some lights. This is actually the same room that we actually film it in, as you can see here. But
oh, yeah, you make it look a lot fancier.
Yeah, we just essentially we turn off these lights, the fluorescent lights that are in here. Like usually for a new space, it might be something that takes an hour and a half, 2 hours to kind of get really set up nicely. But because we've sort of made a system, like we know these LEDs go here, here, and there. A fill light is over there, key light is over there, backlight is right over here, cameras over there on a slider, computers on the table. So like there's two guys now, like every week they know it's their job before I need to do the show, get that all set up, so I just come in and go. It's still not perfect, but for the most part, I think now at least it represents more of the kind of work that I want it to look like.
It's pretty good. And, you scared me a little bit talking about fill lights and whatever you were talking about. I invested in some like $10 clip on the laptop.
That's so good. I saw that when I even looked at some of your recent ones, that I said that I'm glad you're actually taking advantage of that, because I noticed that you always seem to. I think the first one I saw some of the evolution too, so I said I think she's picking up from that. So even like usually, even for these meetings or these sort of online conferences, even when I'm having like a Zoom meeting, I usually don't have it in this room. I usually have it in one of our smaller conference rooms, but the light is directly above my head, so it casts what I call raccoon eyes. So ultimately, I said, no, I can't do it in there, because there's no way in there for it to look good, because it's such a small room. In here, it's a little bit more controllable. So yeah, there's so much to it, but
like you said, you learn as you go. You watch the recording and you're like, wow, that was really bad. Like, I definitely need to get new glasses because everything reflects off these. But you don't know that in the beginning. You just kind of one step at a time. But I think you've done an amazing job with it. And you mentioned that you did a video for us for our last Techsy Talk, which was amazing. So I'm going to put that in the thread on this video so that people can watch it, because it was so funny. Which of course partially Ed coming up with the content, but you guys really executed in such a great way. And also you were
a fun project.
Yeah, it was fun. So we're almost out of time already. Is there anything else that you wish you could tell people who are watching, or you want them to know about how to connect with you, or just any kind of last thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing, and I always share this, and especially it being my passions, is if you aren't taking advantage of video, and this is not a pitch in any way, you don't need to hire me or us or any other visual person. My point is, take advantage of video in some way, shape, or form, whether it's live streaming as Liz is doing with this podcast, or with the Event Hustlers, as well as what I do with Facebook. Live streaming is a big thing. One of the reasons I like Facebook and live streaming is that even if someone doesn't watch it while it's live, it stays in their notifications that you were live. So people are going to find you afterward. That works really well. And for video in general, right now with everyone's attention span waning, I'm one of those people.
Yeah.
People are lazy. It also kind of goes to as well to time, and people's time is really valuable. If they can be able to consume the information that you can provide them in just a couple minutes or a couple seconds, and really engage with you and get to know you and to regularly see you, that is so much more impactful. That I always encourage people to do it. And doing it doesn't mean you need to get a professional camera and get professional lights and do it all crazy. the better you can make it is great, but ultimately to have nothing is horrible. I know people that make their entire video series and even doing relatively professional videos with an iPhone, with a Galaxy device. You can actually get lavalier microphones and connect it to your iPhone, or to even a professional mic and connect it. But any way you can get started is the absolute best thing you can do. And ultimately, as you grow that and you start to realize the value of doing it, even if it's on your own, getting an intern or someone to do it for you, when you want to do it professional, then you can give me a call. I'd love to help in any way I could.
Absolutely. And the content lives forever. Like you said, once you create it, it keeps serving and selling for you years later.
Yeah, definitely.
Chop it. Like we have this whole 30-minute interview. I could pull this into 30-second clips, and you can put those in different places, and you can embed it into your blog. And one piece of content can work for you in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And yes, when you're ready to hire professional companies, there's some really great companies like yours that can help you do it. And, like we do this on our own in my office, but when we worked with you for TECHSYTALK, I mean, the difference is crazy. Definitely worth hiring someone for the right projects. So I'm so glad that we were able to introduce you to the Event Hustler audience. Thank you so much for your time. And we'll be back with every other episode on Tuesdays at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. I just lost track of what time it is. 10:30 to 11 a.m. Eastern. And like Donvil said, we're just going to keep doing it and try to make it better every time and bring in some great guests for you to meet. So Donvil, thank you so much for being an amazing guest today and sharing all of your expertise with us.
Thank you. And I forgot to say, if you want to follow me on any of my social media platforms, I'm always on all of them. It's Donvil Collins, Donvil Collins, no space, on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and also Veekast. So Veekast has its own social platform. So follow me, find me, and I'd love to see you.
And I'm going to put some links to his social channels as well as some of these videos we've been talking about in the thread of this Facebook video so that you can click and see as well. All right. Thank you, Donvil. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.